Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so happy that you're here. My name is Emily Beamer, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am the Philly Tree Plan Program Manager at Public Health Management Corporation, or PHMC. I will be guiding us through the webinar today that is all about our Tree Forward RFP that just opened and is seeking proposals for projects that support the Philly Tree Plan. We'll go ahead and get started here. A few quick housekeeping things before we get started. First, many of you have already done this, but as you're coming in, feel free to drop your name and organization in the chat. We'd love to see who's in the room. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording with everyone who registered after the webinar. A link to the webinar recording will also be uploaded to our website, so you can access it there if needed. Something different this time around is that all of our application materials will be available in English and Spanish. So that will include this webinar. A translated version of this will also be available on the RFP website. Please, as we're going through the webinar, if you have questions, definitely feel free to drop those into the Q&A feature, not into the chat. And we will answer those at the end. So we're going to hold everything to the end and we'll answer those during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If you are having any technical issues, feel free to drop that into the chat and one of our moderators, Harper or Hayden, will work with you to get that figured out. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm actually going to pass it over to Erica from Philadelphia Parks and Rec to talk a little bit about the Philly Tree Plan.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Erica Smith-Fitchman. I am the City Forester at Philadelphia Parks and Recreation, and I'm excited to talk to you about the Philly Tree Plan and how this opportunity is related to that, how that sets the context for what we're trying to do with this opportunity. So the Philly Tree Plan was released in 2023 after several years of intense community engagement and work, and it has 8 goals. Sorry, Emily, am I advancing slides or is someone else? Okay. So it has eight goals. And they are all about trying to grow and care for an equitable urban forest in Philadelphia. This includes all trees across the city, so private property, public property, industrial, commercial, street trees, yard trees. We are looking at the urban forest as a comprehensive whole, and so that involves every resident, every organization, every institution that touches trees. So we're excited to have this opportunity to literally spread the wealth to groups that can implement some aspects of the plan. Next slide. So the Philly Tree Plan included a mapping exercise to identify priority areas in the city. So these are areas that have high poverty, high incidence of public health issues like asthma and COPD, and high heat, and then of course, low tree canopy. So these are the areas that this opportunity is focused on. Regular city operations and services remain available to all of the city, but when we have additional investment like this opportunity, we are looking exclusively at these priority areas, and there is a very good mapping tool that is part of the suite of resources that Emily has put together for this tree forward opportunity. And if you have any questions about that, I'm sure that she's welcomes those questions. But these are the areas that we are looking at. And here is a little bit more detail of those areas. You can see that it's a heat map. So we identified the highest priority areas, and then on a spectrum out from there, because of needing to have some sort of a boundary to the effort. We do have hard boundaries for where this money can be used. Again, that is in the mapping tool. That's very helpful. And that is also dictated by the funder that is providing this money. Next slide. So the reason that we care so much is that the urban forest is an environmental justice issue. If you look at this map, it shows you where in the city the urban canopy is densest and where it is the least coverage. So the darker green areas have the most trees, and the whiter areas have fewer trees. Next slide. And go back real quick. Apologies. Um, this map also is an inverse relationship to poverty in the city. So the areas with more trees have higher income, and the areas in with fewer trees have lower income. It is also an inverse relationship to race in the city. So the areas with fewer trees have a larger Black and brown community, and the areas with larger trees, with more trees, have a larger white community. And so that is the basis for having this conversation about the urban forest as an environmental justice issue. Everyone deserves access to healthy tree canopy. These are the 8 goals of the Philly Tree Plan. The tree forward opportunity is available for any project that addresses any of these goals. You can see that they include things like coordinating entities that are supporting trees, protecting existing tree canopy, of course, growing our tree canopy, but growing it equitably across the city. Hence the reason that we are focusing on the priority areas for this opportunity. Also reducing the burden of trees on residents, because we know from the effort we did to put this plan together, and anyone who works in urban forestry knows that people can be resistant to having new trees in and around their property because they see bad examples or bad ambassadors of trees, trees that are not maintained, that were not planted on purpose, weed trees, trees that are in the wrong spot. And so those trees can become a burden. And if we're going to increase our tree canopy, we want it to be well-maintained tree canopy. Sometimes that means removing hazardous trees or trees that are bad ambassadors. It also includes investing in people and communities. So that's jobs for people in their own neighborhoods, caring for trees. And we have some good examples of doing that already, both here at the city and in lots of the groups that are doing work in the city in urban forestry. Also communicating and advocating about trees and the benefits of trees, but also advocating for people to benefit from trees, and celebrating the work that's already been done. Again, projects that address these goals are all relevant projects with some detailed restrictions that we'll talk about, but this is the breadth of what we're really going for. It's not just a tree planting grant. And now I'm excited to hand it over to William Penn. I see that Jamie is here, and I'm trying to
I'm
see
here.
the list of, oh, and Michelle is here too. I couldn't see my list of participants. So Michelle is here. Michelle Perch from William Penn Foundation is here. They also have an opportunity for funding for urban forestry projects aligned with the Philly Tree Plan. And we wanted to make sure that we are coordinating as closely as possible. And I want to hand it off to Michelle to talk about their funding opportunity and how to learn more. Thank you,
Great.
Michelle.
Thanks so much, Erica, and thanks all for having me. I'm Michelle Perch. I'm a senior program officer at the William Penn Foundation in our Environment and Public Space program. And I'm excited today to give you a little preview of our Urban Trees RFP, which will be released next week. So I'll just share a little bit about the foundation's goals and project eligibility, as well as what to expect from the William Penn Foundation process. I also want to say that this is a really nice opportunity for us to connect with organizations that we don't always reach, and just to talk about how this opportunity might align with your work. So for those who don't know, the William Penn Foundation is a family foundation based in Philadelphia and doing grant making in the surrounding region. The foundation launched a strategic plan in 2024, which includes the Environment and Public Space program that I'm a part of. And that Environment and Public Space program includes grant-making portfolios focused on achieving 13 different objectives. One of those objectives is to support efforts that increase the number of trees in the priority areas of the Philly Tree Plan and create the conditions under which new and existing trees can thrive. So just to reiterate, for all projects funded under this urban trees objective, the key criteria for eligibility are that it needs to have impact on one or more priority areas, and we'll have instructions for what those priority areas look like in our RFP when it's released next week. And then projects must demonstrate a high likelihood of resulting in more trees in those areas by 2035. We have a 10-year strategic plan timeline. So just to share a little bit about the details of the opportunity, the foundation is making most of its grants now via a request for proposal process. There's generally one RFP for each objective released each year. And Emily, you can go to the next slide. The intent behind the RFP process is really to increase our exposure as staff to ideas from the field. We really value practitioners' experiences and expertise, and to create an open and transparent opportunity for folks to apply. So again, the RFP is not yet released, but it will be released next week on September 10th. We'll have our own informational webinar on September 15th at 11 a.m. The deadline to apply will be at the end of October on the 23rd. And then we'll notify you of next steps in early to mid-November. And the foundation conducts site visits with a select group of applicants as part of the RFP process. And then our board meeting is in early February. So all of this will be posted on the foundation's website under the funding opportunities page. But you can also subscribe to the foundation's newsletter on our website to get information about all of the funding opportunities available, including this opportunity. I also want to mention that if you're like really eager and want to know more, the RFP from last year is available on the website. So that includes things that I'm not sharing today, like the decision-making criteria that we used last year in the first round. I also wanted to just say that after the informational webinar, you can, if you have more questions, you can book time to talk with me. You can book time with me actually anytime on the foundation's website. If you go to my bio, if you go to the bottom of that page, you can reserve time to have a meeting. And then the last thing I'll say about this opportunity is that we're really excited to be partnering with Tree Forward. We'll be able to share applications with them. So when you complete an application for the William Penn Foundation, you can opt in to share your application with other funders. And for this RFP, if you check that box, we'll share your application with Tree Forward if it appears to be a fit for the Tree Forward opportunity. So yeah, again, really happy to be here and to share this opportunity with you all. And yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michelle. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you coming to talk about your RFP. And as Michelle mentioned and Erica mentioned, we are super thankful to be collaborating with William Penn on these funding opportunities. Before we keep moving, I also just do want to acknowledge that, writing grants can be a lot of work, can be really time consuming, and I know that it can be challenging when multiple opportunities that are very similar are open at the same time. For this round, the timing really worked out best to have it open at this time in fall of 2025. That's not to say that we might not shift the timing in future cycles if it is deemed that that is easier for you all, for our applicants and community organizations to have these RFPs open at a different time. So more to come on that. We'll continue to iterate and think about the timing of when this is released. And now I am super excited to transition us to sharing about some of our past Tree Forward projects. As some of you may know, we did release the first cycle of this RFP earlier in 2025 and did receive 3 really amazing proposals from 3 community-based organizations. Unfortunately, due to the administration change and some funding challenges, we were not able to award those funds for those proposals. But we are so thankful to our Philly Tree Plan partners, namely Philly Parks and Rec and the Horticultural Society, PHS, for stepping in to support these projects so that all three of them were able to be funded in some way. We're also really thankful to these three community organizations for their amazing work on these projects and for being so flexible and understanding as we were navigating these funding challenges. And so we really thought that one of the best ways for you all to understand what's possible through Tree Forward is to get some ideas for potential projects would be to share about these projects that have already been supported through this program. I'm really excited that you all will get to hear about all three past projects today and so thankful for these three partners for coming to share. And with that, I will hand it off to Robin from the Woodlands to talk about their project.
Hi there. Thanks, Emily. As Emily said, my name is Robin Rick. My pronouns are she, her, and I work for the Woodlands in West Philadelphia. I'm the facilities and landscape manager, and along with my colleague Jessica Baumert, our director, we put together the proposal that was ultimately funded by PHS and helped administer the work. So you can go to our first slide. For those of you who may not be familiar, just a real brief who and what are the Woodlands. We are a 54-acre site in West Philadelphia. We are a historic site. We are a cemetery. And day to day, possibly most importantly, a green space for our neighbors here in West Philadelphia and for all of Philadelphia, where our entrance is located directly across the street from the 40th Street trolley portal. So we are very well connected to the rest of the city and especially West and Southwest Philadelphia. We are, as I said, open to the public, but we are privately owned and operated at two nonprofits. So any public funding we get is through competitive grant processes. One of the features visitors really love about the site is a 1-mile perimeter trail that kind of gets you off the pavement, really immerses you in the green landscape of the site. And that green landscape is constituted by over 1,000 trees and shrubs, 120 different species. And you can check those out from afar or on site with our digital interactive map of all those trees. So with all of those trees, we have challenges. And to help manage them, the organization has twice commissioned a tree inventory and assessment. The first time was in 2001, and then we updated that in 2021. And in 2021, we were able to see that we had planted 185 trees in that 20-year period, but we had lost 300, mostly due to age and storm damage, things like that. Sorry, that it looks like my PDF conversion made a little mistake there. Instead of bow projected imminent loss, it's 80 tree projected imminent loss, largely due to the emerald ash borer. We had into 2021, there's over 60 ash trees on site. We were only able to treat about 20, and so over 40 we're going to, eminently decline because of emerald ash borer damage. We were able to kind of confirm that net impact of the 300 removed versus 185 planted by referencing the city's tree canopy data from 2008 and 2018. That was a really great tool for us to just kind of, check our understanding of what's going on site. And then also as part of the assessment, a lot of urgent work was identified, including removals of dangerous trees or dead trees, those ash trees that were in decline, and also a great deal of preventative pruning, structural pruning, deadwood pruning. And the total cost of that urgent work that really was identified just far exceeds our very modest annual tree budget. With storms and just general aging canopy, we just can't meet the need. Meanwhile, one of the big challenges to replanting and accelerating canopy replacement is that the cemetery, the burials, et cetera, roads, paths, do constrain where we can replant. If you can go to the next slide. So on to our proposal to tree forward. So we kind of had this data that we had collected through the inventory and assessment. We had also previously applied for a grant to do this exact same work that was unsuccessful. So we had some past grant work that we could pull on. As Emily said, there's lots of grants out there. It's a lot of work to put together applications. Being able to kind of reuse some of the data we had collected was really helpful. So our proposal was to remove 15 dead and hazardous trees, most of them ash trees that were untreated, specifically along that perimeter trail that gets really heavy use. And then in order to kind of accelerate our canopy restoration, we plan to replant at a rate of 1.5 trees to 1. So 15 were removed, we're going to replant 22, 23. As it ends up, the numbers are a little different, but that was our plan. And then, as I mentioned, most of the trees that were in decline were ash. And so we want to diversify the species that we're planting back with for climate resilience to, invasive insects and disease, also for our wildlife friends, give them more things to munch on, and just for the education of our visitors. So with that, pretty basic, and I mean, this proposal didn't touch on all of that pruning, and it didn't cover all of the dead and hazardous tree removals we needed. We just isolated one specific project that we thought would have a really big impact. So implementation and outcomes, we were just so encouraged to get the news that this proposal was going to be funded after getting the news that it wasn't going to be funded. Real emotional roller coaster over here. But we were so thankful to everyone who helped make that possible. And in order to implement it, we did put together a real brief RFP with the trees we had identified, quantified, and put it out to 3 arborist service contractors, had walkthroughs, really great conversations with all 3 that actually helped us shift things a little. In fact, there were 2 untreated ash trees that leafed out better this spring than we expected. So we shifted those 2, we added them to our treatment regimen instead of removing. But unfortunately, we also identified trees that we hadn't previously noted that needed to come down. So net, we ended up with being able to remove 20 trees for the budgeted, for the budget we had put together. They ground the stumps to make room for those new plantings. And we also cut 2 large dead oak trees back, but left the snags standing for wildlife. And we are now in the process of putting together our replanting lists. And that is one of the best parts of my job, thinking about what we can add for the generations to come, what we can add to this landscape for people to enjoy and hopefully soon rest under the shade or walk under the shade of. So again, thank you to all the partners, and feel free to get in touch with me here at the Woodlands if you just want to come visit, or if you have questions about our proposal. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. We really appreciated hearing about your project and are just, yeah, so grateful for all the good work you're doing. And shout out PHS for providing support for this project. And with that, I will pass it over to Dom from CMAC to talk a little bit about their Tree Forward project.
All right. Thank you so much, Emily. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to all of our great partners at Tree Forward, PHMC, Tree Philly. As Emily said, my name is Dom. I'm Dominic Brennan. I'm the Community Building Coordinator at CMAC. In this role, I work closely with community members to discuss neighborhood improvements, their businesses along the South 7th Street commercial corridor, our community gardens, and also work closely with our other staff members on our long-term revitalization project of Mifflin Square Park. And so I'm sure there are people from all over the city on this call. So for those who aren't familiar, Mifflin Square Park is in Southeast Philadelphia, where CMAC does the majority of our work. It's located at 5th and Wolf. We see Mifflin Square Park as kind of a central community hub. I like to think of it for our tree planting project as a hub and spoke model where we have an increased urban canopy at the park, and then hopefully we'll have some spokes coming off where we can have tree lined streets where people can walk from their temple or church under shaded trees to the park or to school, to the shops, etc. We see it as a place for a wide variety of people to enjoy the space and all meet up and spend time together. And so it was only natural that we would choose to seek grant funding to increase the canopy there. And when we saw the Tree Forward application, we wanted to start there. Because of the timeline of this original grant, it was focused on just maintenance. So we've had a long-standing revitalization project of Mifflin Square Park over the past 10 years. And in 2024, we installed two new playgrounds. You can advance to the next slide, Emily, sorry. I just have a couple pictures throughout to show a project that we worked on. But we installed two new playgrounds, and during that installation project, some of the long-standing legacy trees unfortunately had to come down. So in our initial proposal, we putting in some new saplings to replace those. So unfortunately, as Emily mentioned, because of the funding pause, that stopped, but we're very thankful to our partners at Tree Philly who were able to kind of think quickly, and Tree Forward who were able to think quickly and organize an Arbor Day celebration to pick up the slack on that. So on Arbor Day, April 25th, we were able to plant 11 shade trees at Mifflin Square Park and work with a lot of school groups and community members to come out and do that, which is really, really exciting. We were also able to plant 4 fruit trees at our community gardens as well. And this event had a lot of people come out, also state and city officials, to celebrate Philadelphia's designation as a tree city for the 49th year in a row. And as I mentioned, we're very grateful. I go down and water all of these trees regularly, and everybody, all of our neighbors have a lot of kind support. Sorry, I just had something pop up. A lot of kind support and words to say, and are really, really excited to see more trees go in. I think it's one of those kind of cyclical things where people see a tree go in and say, how can I get that in front of my house? I want shade in front of my house ASAP. So as I said, these are just some pictures of the installation, and we're very thankful to Tree Philly for facilitating this. We had a lot of different varieties go in, and it's going to make a much less hot area. So thank you.
Thanks, thanks so much for sharing about your project. And yeah, shout out Tree Philly for kind of helping to facilitate this and make this happen with an Arbor Day celebration. And last but not least, I will kick it over to Miss Elaine from Global Thinking Initiatives to talk a little bit about their project.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, so good afternoon. I'm Elaine Wells. I'm the founder of a community nonprofit called Global Thinking Initiatives Incorporated. Um, our project was a workforce development pilot project. A little bit about Global Thinking Initiatives is we are a resource-based community nonprofit. We are a small but mighty team of community caregivers who look to fill needs where we see them in the communities of Cobbs Creek and Haddington. One of those needs with our environmental justice work, one of those needs um, for us and this project was to have more community-based engagement. And that meant students, young people, and actual neighbors from the neighborhoods that we are working to green up. And so this workforce development project, you can advance to the next slide, please. Through this workforce development program, I'm just going to turn my camera off because it's lagging a little for me. The goals of our project was to introduce, inform, and engage the students and the community members to the many different ways and opportunities there are in the greening career track. Aside from that, it was to let them know of ways that they can not only improve their neighborhoods and communities, but could take them places into fields and careers that they never even imagined. Another one was to expose participants to the tracks and pathways from tree tenders status to all the way up to the director of the EPA. That there are various greening careers and networks in and around Philadelphia that are really strong. And unless you're exposed to it, you would never know about it. Another one was to train and educate the participants on tree identification, tree health, tree care, and tending through a series of hand-on workshops with local industry leaders. And they also had an opportunity to earn money while doing this. And lastly, was to hear from those same greening professionals from entry level all the way up to directors on their journeys into greening and what was possible for them, what's possible for the participants as well. Next slide, please. Enthusiastic engagement was key. We held 4 classroom sessions with the generosity of PHMC Cedar on campus on Cedar. We had room to have engagement around community caregiving was our first session. Ashley Davis from PHS was a phenomenal speaker and presenter with the group. She had an exercise where each member of our participants, our participant group was assigned a community role. So you may have been a family member with kids who were taking care of kids and an elderly parent, a block captain. We had a committee member. And then there was the ever resistant neighbor on the block. And we got to role play around why or why not we should have more trees in the community. And when I tell you the young people, so we had 4 students, 3 from Boys Latin, 2 from Boys Latin, 1 from Reach Cyber Charter School, and 1 recent graduate of, I can't remember the name of her school, but we had 4 students and we had 3 community members. And when I tell you the students got so involved in this, it was, if we had thought to film it, it would have been an amazing thing to watch how they got the facts and the benefits. We educate them around the facts and the benefits of having trees in the community, and they just went to work. The one young man, his name is Jeremiah, he was assigned the block captain's role, and he immediately went into mediation mode, where the neighbor who was always against the greening and the parents of a few small kids who said that they didn't want the trees, or they would like the trees, but they didn't want the work that came with the trees. And the committee member who people were on about getting some greening started in the community, but they were kind of taking their time about it. And he went right into immediate mediation mode, and it was a beautiful thing to see. And he was, just giving out the facts that he had just learned about having the trees, about possible programming that would help residents with taking care of their trees. It was amazing. We had Lori Hayes there, was the director for a tree program in Philadelphia, and she recently retired a few years ago. And she just shared with the group about her journey that didn't even start it didn't even start as an environmental career, but wound up being the director of one of those of one of the programs in Philadelphia's tree plan. The other thing is that the level of, which I didn't expect from the young people, the level of enthusiasm around getting to do the outdoor work. We had 4 indoor sessions, and then we did outdoor work. We did tree walks, we did tree ID walks, we did tree care, tree pruning, and identification of diseased trees, who they should contact to get help with something that they don't recognize, and how to relay to neighbors and community members what to do if you have an affected tree, or even if you want to get a tree, or even if you need help with the tree that you already have. So it was more amazing than I could have ever imagined. And you can go to the next slide, please. Key community partners, board insight and experience. I can't say enough about the network of greening professionals that stepped up to help us roll out this project, and the experience and insight that they brought to our program. Well, it was just phenomenal. We had partners from PHS, Fairmount Park Conservancy, Bartram's Gardens, Philly Parks and Rec, Tree Philly, of course, and John Hines Wildlife Refuge. And these are just a few of the pictures of the amazing people that helped us out. We had a panel on our last indoor session, or our last classroom session. We had a panel of these professionals, and the participants got to ask any question that they wanted. And the questions, like they were so engaged, we had to stop the session. Just learning about the different tracks and careers that existed, that there was not one among them that had known about some of the careers that they were introduced to. And it was just phenomenal. The last picture there on the right was an outdoor, we have a pollinator garden. My organization started a pollinator garden at the top of the Cobbs Creek Environmental Center on both sides. And so we had young people from the John Hines program, as well as our participants, come out and plant pollinators. They weeded, and they also planted new pollinators. All after watering trees. We have almost, I think it is 80 trees between the 2 campuses on the Boys Latin of Philadelphia Charter Schools campuses, where 2 of our students were from. And they, after all of our classroom and hands-on sessions, they spent the summer taking care of and watering all of those trees. They did a phenomenal job. We've gotten compliments from the school staff about how much better the trees look. And the guys were really, really invested in the care of the trees. Those same 2 guys from Boys Latin are also on their football team. And some of the new trees that were planted there are on the football field. And there was a total 360 when they started caring for the trees, how they went to the football team and said, hey, you guys can no longer, run the ball this far down the field because you might damage the trees. And then there's this one fig tree, this huge fig tree on the campus, that some of the young men, instead of going in the building to go to use the restroom, they would, take a shortcut and kind of, do it there. And he went to the coach and he was like, listen, coach, you got to tell them they can no longer do that here. And the coach reached out to me and let me know that, he was very passionate about it. And that same young man also told his mother that he was really sad when the classroom part of the engagement ended, and that he's in 12th grade, he's a senior this year, and that he's also thinking about changing his major when he goes to college to environmental science. And that was the best part of this project for me, just teaching them about what they can do to beautify their community, that these career pathways exist. And the other thing is that there's not, historically, there are not a lot of people who look like them in this career, and that they have every opportunity. They just needed the exposure and the information about these careers. And I'm looking forward to extending that to other members of the Boys Latin community, as well as our community members who have long been out of school, but had their community activism hats in just engaged and set on fire. And I've been in constant contact with them. They call me about trees, especially in the Haddington area. They call me about, some of the trees or some of the things that they see going on with trees. They let me know when their neighbors want trees. And it's just, like I said, it's just a matter of getting people informed and educated about these careers and these pathways. And even if it's just on a volunteer basis, that they are actually, wanting to do this work to beautify the communities that they live in. And so I want to take some time to thank those who thought that this was a good idea and funded us. We really appreciated it. There's also going to be a winter part of this where we're going to go back out and do some more tree pruning. We're going to have some more professionals come in and, keep the learning and engagement going. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm free to answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elaine. That was really great. And thank you so much to Dom and Robin as well. We really appreciate all the great work you're doing and your willingness to come and share about them today, the projects that you did. I really hope that it was helpful for everyone to hear all these really cool, very unique, different, diverse projects. And I hope it gets you excited. I think that the really amazing thing about the tree plan is that, yes, the goal is to increase tree canopy, but there are so many ways to do that, and there are so many goals within the tree plan. And this RFP is really intended to be pretty broad to allow you to meet the needs that you are identifying in your communities. So with that, I will transition us to talking about the RFP and the requirements and the opportunity, which is tree forward and to implement goals of the Philly Tree Plan. So this RFP is really seeking proposals from community-based organizations for projects that further the goals of the Philly Tree Plan. We will go into a little bit of detail about what that exactly means. In this cycle of funding, we do have $300,000 available, and we expect project proposals to range between $5,000 and $50,000. Anticipate funding about 10 organizations, but that number is not set. So I'll keep moving here. So first, to start with eligibility, first and foremost, you must be a 501c3 or a state nonprofit organization to be considered for this funding. Second, projects must take place in a prioritized area in Philadelphia, so certain census tracts within the city limits are eligible for this funding. This is based on our funder, where this funding comes from. So these are pretty strict requirements. We will share a little bit later on about how to identify whether your project area is eligible, and we have a tool for that. You are also able to apply with a fiscal sponsor. So what fiscal sponsorship means is it's an arrangement in which a tax-exempt organization agrees to provide its nonprofit status and administrative services to a project or group that does not have tax-exempt status. So this means that if you are not a 501c3 or a state nonprofit, it does not necessarily make you ineligible. It just means that you'll have to partner with a fiscal sponsor to apply for this grant. And we do have a list of potential fiscal sponsors available in our resource guide that you can connect with if that is of interest. Also wanted to point out, because I'm sure this will be a question, organizations that do receive funding in this round are eligible and also encouraged to apply in future rounds. We recognize that sustained funding over multiple years is the most helpful. However, this year we are only able to provide one-year grants. But to help sort of support multi-year funding, we will provide a shortened application for those who are funded this year to try to reduce that burden. Whether you're trying to sustain projects, you have a new project, etc., you will be eligible to apply in future rounds. Next, we will keep moving here to the RFP timeline. So as you all probably know, the RFP was released and opened earlier this week on September 2nd. While the RFP is open, we will host 5 office hour sessions, 2 of which will have Spanish interpretation available for those who need it. Proposals will be due on November 3rd, Monday, November 3rd at 9 a.m. So the application period is about 2 months long, which hopefully is, we've extended it a little bit this round because we heard from you all that you wanted a little bit more time. So it's about 2 months. And then following the close of applications, we are tentatively planning to have either site visits or follow-up calls. This isn't set in stone. It kind of depends on how many applications we get. We don't want to have these if they aren't necessary and take up your time for those. So if we do have site visits or follow-up calls, you will know well in advance. So you have time to plan and prepare and get it on your calendar. So more to come on that. And then we will notify applicants of selection in December 2025. So you will know by December whether you got funding, and we will notify all applicants regardless of whether you received funding or not. The project period for this, I'm not sure why project period is so small, but the project period for this RFP is January to December 2026. So it's a 12-month project period. You do not have to propose projects that will take the full 12 months, but it does have to be completed within that 12-month period by the end of December 2026. So we will keep moving here. So next we'll move on to the payment model. So some of you may remember that in the last cycle, we did plan to use a cost reimbursement model, meaning that you would put out the funds and we would reimburse you for them. We did receive a lot of feedback from community partners that advances would be preferable, and we're really excited to be making this shift in this round. So this means that instead of your organization putting the money out up front and getting reimbursed, we will disperse portions of the grant award to you throughout the project period. The grantees will receive an initial payment with additional advances issued throughout the project period. The exact payment schedule will be determined during contract negotiations based on things like your budget, timeline, and other factors. Some examples of this are listed here on the screen. So this could be like 4 equal installments, 25% of your grant issued at quarterly increments. Another example could be if you have a lot of upfront costs in your project, we may advance a larger portion of your grant upfront if that is needed. So you may receive 50% at the start and then smaller installments throughout the project period. I'll say that fortunately, we probably don't have the capacity to do like totally different advance schedules for every single grantee, but we are really going to do our best to work with you so that this can meet your needs. I know that it can be cost prohibitive and limiting for organizations if you are the one that has to put up the money and then be reimbursed. So we're going to do our best to work with you so that we can advance you the funds you need throughout the project period. You will be required to submit spend reports and documentation of each advance before receiving the next installment. So because of strict funding requirements, we just need to make sure that you're spending it as you said you would with allowable cost, things like that, before we give you the next advance. Okay, and then I think with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ashaley from PHS and Kate from Tree Philly to talk a little bit about the project requirements for this RFP.
Thanks, Emily. And thank you so much for everyone who came to learn about this opportunity, everyone who participated last time in the projects that we were able to complete. It was really exciting and fun. And I'm excited about the changes and kind of updates to the opportunity that we've been able to accomplish so far, especially to Emily for all our work on this. I'm going to leave most of the talking to Ashley because she's much better at it than I am, but I'm just going to first talk a little bit about like how to zoom in on the project that we'll find most exciting, that will accomplish, that we really are counting on community organizations to accomplish from the tree plan, and to trying to clarify some of the tools that are available. First and foremost, I think this is kind of obvious, but I just want to make sure you realize that you should reference the tree plan as a guide from the jump. So really familiarize yourself with the kind of the general goals that Erica mentioned before, but also there's tons of more detailed information associated with each of those goals in the tree plan. Physical copies of the Philly Tree Plan are available at the Free Library of Philadelphia. I know I like to touch and feel and read in person, so if that's helpful for you, you can find them there. You can also find them online by Googling the Philly Tree Plan or going back in these slides to the QR code in the during Erica's talking points. You'll find in the back of the Philly Tree Plan, as well as in the RFP, an outline, what we call the Philly Tree Plan implementation roadmap. So that's in the plan on page 70 to 72, and in the RFP on page 7 to 11. A little different in the RFP, we've added green highlights to the goals that we kind of decided as a team would be most beneficial or most successfully completed by community-based organizations. There's lots of information on the roadmap, including like who we imagine the lead organization for these projects to be, or for these goals to be, who the partner organizations. These aren't like absolute, things can change, but they're recommendations. And then short, mid, and long-term goals. So going back to the RFP model, in that chart, we've highlighted we highlighted goals green that jumped out to us, that really feel like we need to lean on y'all, on community-based organizations to fulfill those goals. But I also want to make sure that, or like they're well suited for y'all. But I also want to make sure that you realize that this is meant as a guide and that you're not limited to just those green highlighted goals. You can reference any of the tree plan goals as long as you are referencing one in your application. They're all applicable. So you've already heard about some examples and some ideas that we've received in the first round of the RFP, but I'm going to pass it over to my colleague and friend Ashley from PHS to talk about some more concrete examples and also community kind of engagement strategies that we'd really like to see in the projects fulfilled from this RFP. So I'll pass it to Ashley.
Sweet. Thank you, Kate. And Emily, can you advance to the next slide, please? Awesome. Kate was being way too kind. She's incredible at speaking as well. And thank you to all the speakers who made time to be here today. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the community engagement part of this. As Kate mentioned, we did highlight green in the section of the RFP. One thing we want to drive home is that there are existing programs around trees, like planting and care often comes to mind as that first implementation project, but we don't want to duplicate those. We want to fill in the gaps for community needs with this. So we want to see you shine in your expertise, definitely prioritizing community care. So you see that we highlighted in community engagement, make sure you engage community members, demonstrate like prior engagement in the planning and implementation of the projects, make sure you're updating community members, that you're not shocking them at the stages that for at different stages as the project is going on. And this is a great opportunity, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but where those letters of support come in. We really want to see letters of support from community lab collaborators on the project, or them giving you a great reference to existing work that you've done in the past, and not necessarily from larger institutions, especially the ones that are involved in the granting of this process. But think about the goal of this RFP as thinking outside the box and maximizing the goals of the plan that many of you contributed to. So what were you thinking about when you were in those steering committees, or when you read over the plan? What were those really like out the box cool ideas that you were thinking about? And so examples that we've kind of called out for this webinar is like 3.6A in that roadmap, which is like it could be a block party celebration for a planting on a block where trees have been planted. Or 8.3, getting and collecting resident stories around trees, which takes a lot of time and trust building, paints a really important picture that can be super long lasting, and it's just as important for a healthy and long-term tree canopy. And then driving home again what Emily mentioned before is that these projects must be completed in a 12-month period. So somewhere between January 2026 and December 2026, it must be completed in that time frame. But if you do get approved, you will be eligible for an abbreviated application process for the next round of funding. I know Emily mentioned that, but we really, really, really want to drive that home, that you can think about this project and think of it as that first round of implementation. Robin mentioned it earlier, is that they chose a project in the woodlands, a part of this bigger plan, but maybe we'll see them repeat and come back to implement another part of that project. So that's a great example of honing in on a specific goal and then thinking about how you can expand that or continue that for the next round of funding. And now I will pass it back to Emily, who will talk to you about geography requirements.
Thanks, Ashaley, and thank you, Kate, as well. We'll keep moving here. So next, for project scope requirements is geography. So as we've mentioned earlier, there are pretty specific geographic limitations to this funding. And this is our requirement from our funder. So there are three tools that have been combined that show the eligible areas that you can use this funding in. These tools are the CGES tool, the PAEJ tool, area tool, and the federal opportunity zones. And the geography that is eligible is like a little bit wider than the priority areas. So there's like a little bit of flexibility, but pretty much overlaps with the priority areas. And I would really strongly encourage you to, before you start working on your proposal, to please check your eligible geography and make sure that the project area that you're planning to apply for is eligible. We're happy to help you do this. I just do not want you to do a lot of work if it's not an eligible area. So please try to do this. Make it like the first thing that you do. I am going to pivot over here. Can everyone see my map screen? Yeah. I'm not hearing any no's, so I'm going to assume that you can see this. But this link, and Harper will drop this link in the chat for you. But this tool will be able to show you whether your project area is eligible. So this is the Street Tree Planting Opportunity Map hosted by PHS, which, as you can see here, has the layer of priority areas for the Philly Tree Plan. And if you want to identify eligible areas for this specific Tree Forward grant, you will go here and you'll go to Reference Layers, Boundaries, scroll down here to Tree Forward Eligible Areas, and then you'll see this blue layer pop up. So what you're looking for are the blue highlighted areas that are shown as eligible, and that's where you can use this funding. So if, for example, you might be able to tell here that your project area is eligible, but if you want to be extra sure, you can use this search bar to type in an address to make sure it's eligible. So CMAC was talking about Mifflin Square Park. So let's just type this in here. You'll see it'll zoom down here. It will show you it, and you can see that it's shown in blue. So it should be really clear to figure out whether the project area you're proposing is eligible or not. Again, I really encourage you to do this as like the first thing before you start your proposal. And if you have any issues, technical issues with the map, you can absolutely reach out to us and we are more than happy to help you. So I'm going to come back over here to my slides. We'll keep moving here. So just want to call out a couple funding restrictions. Again, these come from our funder. These don't come from us, so there's not a ton of flexibility that I can offer with these. But so these are what they are. So first is with hazard tree removal. If this is something you're going to propose, these are a few things to be aware of. So really clearly in our requirements are that trees must not be removed if they're providing substantial benefits and minimal risk. They can only be removed if they're in a condition that causes more harm than good to the community, and they must be replaced at a rate of 1 to 1. The replacement trees must be in the same zip code, and they must be planted within a year. They don't necessarily have to be planted within the project period. So say you remove a tree in September of 2026, you don't need to then replace it until September 2027. So you may be replacing the trees after the project period, but if you are proposing any kind of tree removal, we do want to hear about in your proposal how you plan to replace these. The next funding restriction is equipment. So you are not funding or equipment cannot be purchased that is over $5,000, and this includes vehicles. If you have a piece of equipment that will cost more than $5,000, you will have to lease that. And then the third one is construction. And this is really strict too. Funding may not be used for construction. And I think a good example of this is with tree pit cuts. So you can definitely use the funding to cut a pit to plant a tree, or you can also use it to expand a pit if you need to. However, you cannot use it for things like repairing the sidewalk. So pit cuts are okay, sidewalk repair is not. So those are some like examples of what might not be allowable. And if you have any questions about that, we're happy to talk more. If there's any question, we're definitely happy to talk through that with you. Okay, so now we're going to move to submission requirements, and I'm going to go through all the different components that are in the application here, just so we're all on the same page and you're aware of what the expectations are. So first, you'll be asked for very basic, like contact information, organization information, and a very brief executive summary that is that will be 1 to 2 sentences that we ask for. For organization information, the application will also ask you if you're planning to use a fiscal sponsor, and if you are, it'll ask for some additional information from them just so that we can be aware of their like contact information and organization information and things like that. Next, you'll see some attachments that are required, and we'll run through these now. So first, as we said, you have to be a 501(c)(3) or state nonprofit organization unless you're using a fiscal sponsor. So we'll ask for documentation of that, and there are a couple different allowable documents that we'll accept that are detailed in the RFP and in the application. We also require a 990 tax document or equivalent. We'll also require a financial statement, your most recent financial statement, and this should match the type of financial statement depends on the annual contributions that are shown in your 990. So if you have less than 25,000 in contributions, you do not need a financial statement. If you have 25,000 to 99,000 in annual contributions, we'll still need a financial statement, but it doesn't have to be audited. And then if you are at that $100,000 or more limit of annual contributions, we will need an audited financial statement. So just be aware of that as you're getting these documents together based on your annual contributions, which one we're looking for. We will also ask for a certificate of insurance that lists PHMC as a certificate holder and a completed W-9 form. Both of these are really to help us expedite the contract processing if you were to receive funding. We need these documents to set you up as a vendor in our system, so this allows us to just expedite that process a little bit. If you are applying with a fiscal sponsor, the documents 1 through 5 we'll need those from the fiscal sponsor, not from your organization. So if you have questions on that, please reach out to us, but just something to be aware of, and that is noted both in the RFP and the application. Next, as Ashley mentioned, we also are this round requiring just at least one letter of support from a community member, a partner, a stakeholder in this work. The who it comes from is kind of broad based on, it just needs to be a community partner to your organization or the project. But here we really want to hear from someone that's like vouching for your organization, is familiar with the project, is familiar with how it was developed, or something like that. We really just want to hear from the community about the project and your organization and kind of vouching for it. So one letter of support is required, and then optional, not required, is your business designation. We are planning to give a few extra points for organizations that have one of these business designations, so just be sure to upload that with your application. Next, and so this is really the heart of your application. We have adjusted things slightly in this round. There will be 4 main application questions that will ask you to answer, that will ask you different things about the project. Something to note is that each question does have recommended word count. This is really just meant to be helpful for you all and like the kind of how many words, how much text we're looking for. This isn't a strict requirement. If you are under or over this, it's totally fine. So don't stress about it. It's really just meant to be helpful, not to be something stressful. So the first is your scope of work, and this is worth the most amount of points. Here is where you will outline your proposed project. You'll detail the different activities, deliverables, and outcomes. Provide a timeline that should include any time for planning or implementation and any closeout that you'll do, highlighting any key milestones and deliverables. And this should really align with the other information that we receive in the following in the subsequent questions. And this is, this is really where you're telling us this is what I'm going to do. So this is probably like the most important part of your application. Number 2 here, we have alignment with the Philly Tree Plan goals. So as Kate mentioned earlier, a requirement for this project is alignment to at least one sub-goal of the Philly Tree Plan. So in this section, we really want you to identify the goal. You just need one, but you can identify up to 3. And we want to hear about how your project supports that goal, how it furthers it, things like that. Next, we have beneficiaries and community engagement. So this is kind of extending on what Ashley already mentioned. We really want to hear about who are the primary beneficiaries or the community who will benefit from your project. How have they been involved, prior to you proposing this? How have they informed you selecting this project for implementation? How will they be involved in implementation? Explain how their like needs or input were involved in kind of formulating this whole project, and how they will be engaged throughout the process. So really want to hear about that. Super important to us. This is worth 25 points of your application. And then the 4th and final question is about key staff or volunteers. We do recognize that there's a variety of organizations made up of some have paid staff, some have no paid staff and volunteers. That doesn't really matter to us. What matters to us is that you have people on your team that are able to execute on the project that you're proposing. So just want to hear about who those people are and want to be able to see that what you're proposing aligns with the capacity that you have to implement that. Okay. Next, we have your budget. So this will be worth 10 points. And in this section, we'll require a budget template upload, and we do have a template that we provide that's linked in the RFP in the application. So you'll be required to use that template, and we want to see all the associated costs with your project and want to be able to really align with what you're proposing in your scope of work and match that to what's being requested in the budget. As I said earlier, we expect that project will range from about $5,000 to $50,000. The minimum request has to be for at least $5,000. We won't consider requests for less than that. You can request more than $50,000 if that's needed for your scope of work. $50,000 isn't a limit. It's really just like a suggestion. But we will consider higher requests. It should just align with the scope of work, and you should be able to, as we've said before, complete the project within a 1-year period. In addition to your budget template, we also request a very brief budget narrative. Again, this is not meant to be super difficult. A concise bulleted list will work just fine. We just want to kind of hear, this gives us a chance or gives you a chance really to expand on what you're including in the budget to be able to sort of describe, like, we have requested this line item because of XYZ. This staff person will do this and is integral to the project because of whatever it may be. So this just gives you a chance to kind of elaborate a little bit and explain the budget items that you've requested. Next is our scoring criteria. This is included in the RFP. For the sake of time, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this just because I want to leave a time for questions that you all may have. But this is included really for all of these. The point structures are listed here. So scope of work is worth the most, and then it kind of goes down from there with beneficiaries, alignment to the Philly Tree Plan, key staff, and budget. And we're happy to talk in more detail about the different criteria that we'd be looking for if it would be helpful for you. Next, we have technical assistance. So we really are trying to make this RFP accessible. We want to be available to you to answer questions, to talk through your project scope, to talk through any technical questions that you may have. And so there will be 5 office hour sessions available for you to attend. These will look like one-on-one 15-minute increments that will be available to answer whatever kind of questions you have about the RFP. You will, in the RFP on the website, and we'll send it out after this in the follow-up email, are Calendly links to sign up for them. There's one link for English and one link for Spanish. And we do request that you sign up at least 24 hours in advance, just for our planning purposes, especially for the Spanish session, so that we can make sure that we have an interpreter available for those. Next, a few other resources that we have available for you. We do have an FAQ that includes a lot of frequently asked questions that is available in English and Spanish, and we will update that regularly throughout the RFP process. So questions that we get today will be added to that, and so on. And we also have a resource guide that was kind of born out of a recommendation from last time that just compiles a lot of resources that we think might be helpful for you, either in planning your project and putting your application together, or, once you're funded, there are lots of different helpful resources there. So definitely encourage you to check that out. And if there are things that are not included there that you would like to see, we're happy to kind of add resources to that as we go. So it will be sort of like a living document as we identify more needs. You also are always welcome to email us. Our email is here on the screen. I think Harper's going to drop it in the chat. It is phillytreeplan@phmc.org. We're here throughout the process to answer your questions. If an office hour time doesn't work, we're happy to try to find some other time to work with you. We really are trying to make this an accessible process, so we want to be able to meet your needs as they arise. So definitely reach out to us, and we'll be happy to hear from you. Okay, and last but not least, before we get into the questions, just want to take a second to say that we really do value your feedback, and we really do want to hear from you on the improvements that you'd like to see to the application process and to the project period, all of those things. So we got some really good and thoughtful feedback in our last round, and we really used that to make a lot of changes in this cycle. Some of them being, like revising our application process and application questions in process, extending the application period and the project period, creating a searchable map tool to make that a little bit easier. We're changing our model to an advanced funding model and offering Spanish translation. So we really want to hear from you. We can't always implement all the feedback that you share, but it is really important to us to hear it and to continue to improve on this model. I don't think I said this, but we do have this funding for this year and then 3 additional years after, and we'll probably try to keep growing this program. So we're going to always be improving and iterating as we kind of figure out what the needs are of everyone in our awesome organizations across Philly. Again, with that, you can feel free to provide feedback at the form that was just dropped in the chat, or you can always, again, email us at phillytreeplan@phmc.org. And we're happy to hear from you.